on Initiative Africa. My name is Asha Samput. Welcome to this new edition of your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. Let's get on with the show with our top stories today. This week we invite you to follow the final part of François Baudry's interview with journalist-writer Siddique Abba. Straightforward and outspoken, the author of Understanding Boko Haram reveals some secrets about one of the world's deadliest terrorist organizations, such as its recruiting techniques. Here's our guest this week.
Beaucoup de jeunes sont partis dans les rangs de Boko Haram parce qu'il n'y avait pas de perspective. Et quand ils sont arrivés, beaucoup se sont aperçus que le rêve qu'on leur a vendu était faux.
A bushy plant and a herbal tea. This is the recipe that helps fight malaria in Africa. The Artemisia plant is growing in popularity.
Did you know there are areas where there is no pharmacy? The idea is to promote this plant while we develop a drug, because the ultimate idea is to manufacture the drugs locally.
Learn a new profession in a business incubator and perhaps become your own boss. John, Juvenal or even Virginie are trying their luck in Rwanda, a country that focuses on vocational training at all ages.
In the end, it was the program that agreed to guarantee 75% of the loan. It was a real opportunity, as we had no other means.
In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, malaria, one of Africa's most feared diseases, continues to take its toll. Faced with this scourge, a plant has been talked about a lot for years. Artemisia, a bushy plant that can be cut several times a year to make herbal teas. In Africa, some have made it their mission to promote the virtues of this plant against malaria. This is the case of Sostène Massamba Kolela, founder of the Agria Loango Educational Farm near Pointe-Noire in Congo. Our journalist Jean-David Miamle, accompanied by cameraman Bryce Kihu, visited this farm. Take a look.
We are at the HQ of the educational farm Agria Loango on the Indian Point near the seaside town of Pointe Congo. It's here that Sostène Massamba Kolelas decided to promote the cultivation of Artemisia, a medicinal plant. The goal is to help the Congolese to understand and take benefit from this plant to fight effectively against malaria, one of the most feared diseases in Congo in particular.
Did you know there are areas where there is no pharmacy? The idea is to promote this plant while we develop a drug, because the ultimate idea is to manufacture the drugs locally. But we're not ready. We don't have the means. So, while waiting for drugs to be produced locally, we are offering this alternative solution, which is Artemisia herbal tea.
According to WHO, in 2019, 94% of cases of malaria and death related to this disease are recorded in Africa. With 41% of Congolese living on less than $1 a day, according to the latest figures from the World Bank, access to healthcare is difficult. Artemisia then appears as an alternative and not a rival to conventional medicine.
There is often this misconception between conventional as opposed to the traditional medicinal approach that we offer. Artemisia is a choice that is given to Africans. The conventional, in other words the drugs, or the natural approach, which is herbal tea. There was never any question of the producers of Artemisia saying, don't take this, don't take that. Freedom is a very good thing. To live is to choose.
To carry out his project, Sostène Massamba built the Loango Educational Farm on 6 hectares. Representative of the House of Artemisia in Congo, he also aims to transmit to young people the benefit of working the land and the benefits of organic farming.
Here we are at the Agria Loango Educational Farm. At the same time, the HQ of the company Artemisia Congo. There are several activities here. We have Artemisia, where we organize both training about Artemisia, its cultivation and production. Then there is the educational farm component, where we receive schools that bring children for nature and discovery outings. Also parents who bring their children as well, and adults who wish to learn about gardening tips. We also organize training in agroecology, in particular composting. So basically, this is what we do.
Either way, Artemisia enthusiasts say they are satisfied with the product. Artemisia, I think that's a good thing. It's a good medicine that I discovered a year ago through friends who told me about it when I was sick. Once I took it, I was completely relieved and still continue to take it. I think it's a great product to recommend to people. Interestingly, the consumption of Artemisia is gaining ground in the Congo. And according to this pharmacist, the current health context plagued by COVID-19 is not unrelated to this craze. This is a product that sells quite well. It is a product that is in demand. Was it boosted by the COVID effect? I think so, because there is still a lot of communication around this product. It doesn't matter if people are for or against it. Even if we don't have any scientific proof to tell customers at the counter, do this, do that, here are the side effects, etc. What is certain is that people buy it and come back. They take it in a curated way when they feel unwell. They also take it thinking I'm keeping it at home just in case. As soon as I have a problem, as soon as I have symptoms, I anticipate. All in all, mastering the culture of Artemisia is a major goal for Sosten Masamba. Hence, regular training sessions on the cultivation and consumption of Artemisia.
How do you grow Artemisia?
Je creuse d'abord le poquet.
I dig the hole first. I put the manure.
Voilà.
Mixed with manure, with this compost, this is how we plant Artemisia. And then I water the plant.
Je mets l'eau.
The Artemisia looks like this, in a packet that contains 40 grams of herbal tea, dried Artemisia leaves. The dosage is indicated on the back, how to prepare herbal tea. To put it simply, as we do in rural areas, you unpack the content, you divide it into 7 parts. Why 7? Because you're going to take it for 7 consecutive days. Each portion is equivalent to 1 dose. You put in an infusion, a liter of boiling water at 100 degrees with large bubbles. You remove from the heat, you take the potion, you infuse, you cover, you wait at least 15 minutes. You filter, and the liter is to drink during the day.
Sosten Masamba, who proudly claims the status of peasant, continues to cultivate his garden, proud to have turned his passion for agriculture into a profession.
It's now time to meet our guest Siddique Abba for the last part of his interview recorded on the occasion of the release of his second book on Boko Haram, To Understand Boko Haram, written with his son Abdulkader Abba, with an ambition to sensitize especially young people about the little-known undersides of this terrorist organization born in Difa in the southeast of Niger, the author's native region. Well, how do they live? Are they in a team, barracks? Are they in buildings, in huts? What's their lifestyle?
So, Boko
Haram, as we know, with regards to the Lake Chad basin, when Lake Chad shrank, small islands were created. There are 110 islands in the Niger section alone. If you include Chad and Cameroon, there are about 250, maybe 300. Members of Boko Haram live mainly on these small islands known as Tumbus. It's become a kind of town of their own. They have their justice with their courts, they have their barracks, they have their own police. They structure their own lives and use the financial systems they've put in place. Often they even collect taxes. For example, if people come to fish or people... because in this area there is a lot of animal husbandry, there are those who have 200 heads of sheep, hundreds of cows, who bring their animals to drink water, and they pay taxes to Boko Haram. So there's this life they've organized, and that, as long as there are no military operations, their life continues to go on, quietly, like that.
I'm going to ask you a personal question now. Why on earth did you ask your son, Abdulkader, to be associated to this project and the writing of this book?
You did well to mention at the beginning of the interview that I'm from Diffa. My son has a personal connection because once, when I asked him to, well, he was meant to go there. He lives here with me in France. Anyway, he went to Niger. I asked him to go to Diffa, where I'm from, to meet his grandparents, to discover his origins. But on the day he was due to fly to Diffa on a United Nations humanitarian flight, he wasn't allowed to, because the United Nations considered Diffa to be a war zone and a youngster couldn't go. So when he came back, he called me out and said, "But you never told me Diffa was a war zone. I couldn't go there." After that, I started talking to him about Boko Haram. I said, "No, Diffa is not at war, but there is a movement called Boko Haram which operates in the area and which can be violent, and as a precaution, you couldn't go." In 2017, I myself left for professional reasons, and my son didn't want me to go. He said, "No, you can't go. Boko Haram will kill you. I don't want to be an orphan." So we continued the conversation. I explained to him that I can come and go. There are still people who, despite the presence of Boko Haram, still live there. And during these two exchanges, he continued to ask me questions about Boko Haram. What is that? Who gives them money? Why and how do they live? And from these questions, from this questioning and from my answers, I had the idea of writing this book to share our experience, to explain to young people like him who heard of Boko Haram on TV. Because we often only talk about Boko Haram on TV when there's an attack or when there's a kidnapping. But we don't really explain what Boko Haram is, how it's organized. In the interview we had, in which I often explained that although it's the deadliest movement in the world, it's also probably the least known. We don't know much about how it operates, and the exchanges with my son in the form of this book is a way to better understand Boko Haram. It's an educational approach that helps us understand, but also counters certain received ideas. Boko Haram was not always the violent movement it has become. From 2002 to 2009, it was not a violent movement, it was a religious movement that tried to convert. So in the book, I tried to replace all these received ideas and to explain as best I could, in any case, what Boko Haram was and what was its agenda.
What is their real military objective? To fight the system, the state? But to replace it with what instead?
That's a good question, because we can't see what their real agenda is. In fact, at the beginning, when they started through an allegiance to the Islamic State, their agenda was to expand the caliphate. The province of this dream Islamic State in Iraq and in Syria, which couldn't be achieved since the Islamic State was destroyed. Therefore, its extension had to be in Africa. And then, and this cannot be stated often enough, after the defeat of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, it almost recovered in Africa, where the governments were a little weak. Many fighters from the Islamic State showed up in Libya, and from Libya they went down to the Lake Chad basin to help Boko Haram. They don't have a precise agenda today, but they take advantage of this permanent instability that they've created to steal and to enrich themselves. But there is no precise political agenda. We don't know what their objective is, since the actions they undertake are contrary to the values of Islam that they claim to defend, executing people for no reason, as described in the book, where people leaving a mosque after evening prayers were killed by people from Boko Haram. You can't carry out such things and claim to defend Islamic values.
Welcome back to Initiative Africa. Continuous training in entrepreneurship is a constant concern in Rwanda. During the visit of French President Emmanuel Macron last spring, a grant of 5.8 million euros was awarded to support vocational training. The country is also a pioneer in terms of business incubation. We visited this incubator, which allows students of all ages and from different backgrounds to learn a new profession before they start their own business. Take a look.
22 students and soon a career. It's long been an ambition of Rwanda, a country in desperate need of artisans and technicians. But in this class at the Masaka Incubator near Kigali, the focus is very much on business. Soon these young men and women will work in leather, like John Mfuranzima, a 38-year-old craftsman who produces shoes and leather goods.
My dream is to open my factories myself here in Rwanda.
And it's a dream that is no longer inaccessible. John's newfound confidence is mainly due to the business incubator that opened in 2012. It's there that international trainers helped expand his skills.
It support me as like skills, working small shoes and the belt and wallet, but no men's shoes, because this men's shoes it's need by high skills. Shoes for men, it's very difficult. No many people who does know how to do it.
In 2007, Rwanda recognized the added value that could be given to raw materials as one of the primary sources of economic potential for the country. With the help of the African Development Bank, the new incubator will focus on processing leather, fruit crops and milk. 15 startups have already been established.
Our objective is to make sure that people improve in the quality of products, increase their revenue through different services such as marketing, business plan development. So we are here to help very, very small businesses to grow.
One business that had been struggling to take off was the horticultural and beekeeping derivatives company owned by Juvenal Andeyesenga. A former civil servant, he founded his company with $440 to buy basic equipment. And since he joined the incubator, business has begun to improve.
The equipment that is here helps us produce 10 times more than we used to. It's a well-equipped and very clean place compared to where we were working. What we produced in one day takes 1 hour here. It's created several jobs.
Despite these successes, local entrepreneurs still face difficulties. Getting bank loans for startups is a huge challenge.
There was a very big problem in terms of, in the financing mechanism, where you had people who had good projects, especially startups, and they could not find the right finance.
It's this sort of paradox the AFDB hopes to resolve through its support program. Funds of $38 million are being distributed in grants and loans.
When we started it last year, Rwanda was facing some problems, finding the right finance to fund the projects that were ongoing. So it helped us really to address a lot of problems in the sector to find the finance to finance really projects.
Virginia's small company has seen benefits. Recently retired but energetic woman has undertaken a new challenge. Along with a partner, she's producing scented candles and essential oils.
Step-by-step training in entrepreneurship has seen the project improve at each stage. It was finally able to acquire the necessary bank loans to invest in equipment.
We were looking to someone to lend us the money to buy these machines, but we weren't able to find anyone. In the end, it was the program that agreed to guarantee 75% of the loan. It was a real opportunity, as we had no other means.
The results are here in this field. Not only has Virginia created permanent jobs, but also recruits dozens of employees to help grow the plants.
For the moment, there are 8 that I can say as staff, but we have workers. For example, those in the field. There is a field where there are 30, and we bought 4 hectares where we're beginning to grow now.
Today, these entrepreneurs have succeeded in creating jobs and a new life for themselves and their families.
My economy is increased because I finished to study, and my wife was finished university. My children are in school. No problem for school fees, and in the general society, we have a good life.
But no one wants to stop there. Many are thinking about tomorrow and expanding their businesses, employing more staff and even looking to the export markets.
On fait l'horticulture et l'apiculture en parallèle.
It's gardening and beekeeping in parallel in order to provide us with the raw material, because from time to time there's a lack of the raw material in sufficient quantity.
D'approvisionnement de la matière première en quantité suffisante. On exploite le marché local.
Right now we're selling to the local market, but we also intend to export. And to export, we must be sure we have a supply of raw materials on a regular basis.
For some at the Masaka Business Incubator, the time has already come to expand.
Some businesses are not growing because of the capacity. The capacity is still very small to accommodate more than 3 people at the same time.
The price of success demonstrates the country's need for continuous business support, encouraging, therefore, Rwanda's partners to continue and expand support to African entrepreneurs who dream of starting their own business, which will create jobs and wealth for the country.
For the second part of our interview with Siddique Abba, our guest discusses Boko Haram's relations with other terrorist organizations and takes stock of the war waged against the organization by the armies of Sahelian states for more than 20 years, and also an opportunity to discover Niger's educational program designed to give a new chance to young combatants who want to leave the ranks of Boko Haram. Listen to him. Let us come back to the young people who are in this terrorist movement. They were recruited, you said it, because they are victims of poverty, escheat, but they stay nevertheless. So is that why Niger created a program a few years ago called Repentance versus Forgiveness, a program that you know well, I'm sure. So what about that, and what are the results?
In 2016, to be exact, when Dan Dano Mahamadou was appointed governor of Diffa, he made an assessment of the situation and came to the conclusion that many young people joined the ranks of Boko Haram because they had no other prospects. But soon afterwards, many realized that the dream that had been sold to them was false. Their dream was shattered because the defense of Islam that they had been sold was fake. They have seen where the chiefs don't go out to fight, but push them to go out and fight instead. And when they bring back loot, it's unfairly distributed. So they were disheartened. But if they deserted, they were almost sure to go to jail for terrorism. They were stuck in a no-win position. Stay in the hellish conditions of Boko Haram or go back and end up in jail. They were in a difficult situation, but when Niger set up a program, a kind of window opened for them to be able to get away from Boko Haram. The program began by broadcasting messages. These messages were spread by word of mouth amongst the rank and file of Boko Haram, or often by leaflets that had been distributed in the local language. In essence, Niger indicated it was ready to amnesty those who surrendered with their weapons, and that they would not have to serve time in prison, that they were going to be taken care of, trained and reintegrated socially. The program, when it started in 2016, was low-key, but eventually it became apparent many in the ranks of Boko Haram found the program persuasive. A villa set up in Difa to welcome them quickly filled up. A second was fitted out, and that quickly filled up too. Finally, it was decided to organize a center for de-radicalization and vocational training and social reintegration in Gundumaria, about 1,300 kilometers from the capital, Niamey. And that's where many people were welcomed.
But what are their tasks? What about their daily lives for these young people?
It's estimated that between the time it was launched and December 2020, around 500 people have left the ranks of Boko Haram. Some were trained in Gudumaria, others in different professional centers, such as Uduga, which is next to Niamey. This is where they were taken in. They received professional training in metal joinery, woodcrafts, electrical. Then, at the end of their training, they received a kit, because it's not enough to train people, they must receive the means too. For example, those going to do metal joinery have been equipped, receiving the necessary tools to follow up their training, and they return to their village. And to avoid the incentives of joining Boko Haram, other young people who had not left to join Boko Haram were also associated with this training program, which has so far produced some very good results.
Who funds these programs?
To start with, the program was financed by the state of Niger from its own funds. But given the success of the project, foreign partners, the European Union, quickly contributed a lot of money. We are talking about tens of millions of euros that have been invested in the program to train people. And even today, I think Niger, like other countries, are looking for ways to keep it going. And for myself, who has worked on this issue, I think this type of program is more useful than buying weapons. We have seen some countries spend $500 million on planes whose value in the fight against Boko Haram is questionable. If we had invested heavily in this program, it would have made youngsters less likely to volunteer. And, of course, we have to eliminate the ability for Boko Haram to recruit young people if we want to win the fight against them in the Lake Chad area, because the military solution will not work.
You have had access to all this research to write these books, and since you are from a region that saw the birth of this movement, you are the specialist, like I said at the beginning of this interview. Are you in a position to tell us if Boko Haram's time is up? Is it going to disappear?
Oui, il peut disparaître.
Oh yes, it can go away, it can disappear, provided that the right strategy is found. Today, what doesn't work is the idea that we can eradicate Boko Haram by military means. That's a misconception. Governments created multinational joint forces in 2015, which included troops from Nigeria, Niger, Chad, and even Benin, which came to reinforce those states. But we didn't get the results we'd hoped for, because it was believed the whole military and security thing was sufficient. What we need are development solutions. Unfortunately, even today, whether in northern Cameroon, where Boko Haram is still recruiting, or in northeastern Nigeria, in southeastern Niger, in the Lake Chad basin, there are enormous development challenges. As we know, this region, due to the drying up of Lake Chad, is now facing a crisis of food insecurity and the impoverishment of the population. Combined, all of this means that unless we're careful, if we continue to associate the military and security with development, governance, or an ecological response, the issue of Boko Haram may still have a good few years ahead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Initiative Africa is over for today. Don't miss this exclusive interview of Siddique Abba in this edition and also the previous edition of Initiative Africa on our news website, africaonair.com, as well as all the replays of our programs. And of course, you can also find us on all our social media channels. Feel free to share, like and comment with the hashtag Initiative Africa TV show. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, I'll see you again with a new edition of Business Africa. Have a great week and goodbye.